The Fourth Voyage of Sindbad the Sailor, from Sindbad the Sailor and Other Stories from the Arabian Nights, illustrated by Edmund Dulac. Led by the desire to associate with other races and to buy and sell for gain, for the soul is prone to evil, I departed from Baghdad with many precious bales, and set sail from El Basra in a large ship, on which a company of other merchants embarked in like fashion. For many days we had a pleasant journey among the islands, and all went well with us, until, on reaching the wider sea beyond, a mighty wind came up against us. The sea rose in great waves as the tempest increased, and we were in dire peril. More and more violent grew the gale, lashing the sea into fury. The sails were rent, the masts were blown away, we sprang a leak, and slowly the vessel began to sink. We gave ourselves up for lost, and indeed, when the waves passed over us and we sank, many perished. But in the seething turmoil, it was my good fortune to be cast against a broad plank, which I seized and held. Others were struggling for life nearby, and I was able to draw some of them to me. Sore buffeted as we were by wind and wave, we mounted that plank and sat astride of it. Thus, through a whole day and night, we drifted before the gale, now descending into despairing hollows of the sea, and now flung up on the mountain tops of billows. At dawn on the following day, the sea cast us like dead men upon an island, where for many hours we lay exhausted. Albeit, strength began to return to us again, and we arose feebly and staggered forth into the island. Fruit and herbs there were in abundance, and clear fresh water, so we ate and drank and were revived. That night we slept upon the shore, and in the morning we arose strengthened and invigorated. When we had broken our fast, we set ourselves to explore the island, and had not gone far in this before we came to a great building. As we stood at the door of this, wondering who dwelt within, a party of naked men came out, and without a word seized us and led us into a spacious apartment, where we found ourselves standing before their king. He commanded us to be seated, and they brought us food of a strange kind, such as we had never seen. My companions ate largely of this, but my stomach revolted at it, and I ate but little, a thing which preserved me from a terrible fate. For, as my companions ate, they became mad with a ravenous hunger, and ate more and more. Presently they were given coconut oil to drink, and when they had swallowed it, their eyes rolled in their heads, and they continued to eat in a frenzy horrible to behold. I was consumed with fear at these things, and said within myself, "This is a tribe of the Magi, and their king is a ghoul." As I observed them attentively, I remembered a story of these people, how they seize on travelers and set this loathsome food before them to eat, and give them the oil to drink, so that they swell out and eat more and more until they are fattened to an enormous degree, and their minds are rendered like those of idiots. Whereupon, in due time, they kill and roast them, and serve them up as food to their king. And all these things I saw in the days that my companions were fattening, for there were others who had been seized before us, and each day one of these was killed and roasted and set before the king. While I was wasting away with fear and hunger, and it was on this account that they forgot me and left me to die in my own way, my companions had come to be like dull, heavy, stupid beasts of the field, so that they were placed in the care of a beast herd, who led them forth every day to the pasturage. As for myself, as soon as I observed that I was a failure in that I would not fatten, and that none took heed of me, nor marked my coming or my going, I arose in the night and crept away among the trees surrounding the king's dwelling. Then when morning came, I went forth with a heart of fear, knowing not what fresh terror I should encounter. In my wanderings back and forth, I came about midday to a stretch of green pasture, where I beheld with sorrow my late companions grazing on all fours and fattening like beasts for the slaughter, while the beast herd sat upon a rock and piped on an oaten reed. I breathed a silent farewell to them, as to those I should never see again, and turned sadly away. My heart was cold within me, and my steps were faltering as I wandered on, pausing here and there to gather edible herbs and roots, which, for want of something better, served to sustain life in my body. Journeying in this way, I came at length to a grove of pepper trees, and there were men at work in it, gathering the berries. Their aspect seemed to me to be peaceable, so I exposed myself, and they approached me and pressed upon me, asking my name and whence I had come, for my aspect excited their curiosity. Then I unfolded to them the tale of the adventures, the perils, and the horrors that had befallen me, and when I had related the sad case of my companions, they wondered greatly at my escape. While they resumed their work, they made me welcome amongst them, and set nutritious food before me, the like of which I had not tasted for many days. I regaled myself on their bounty, and rested, and was content. When they had finished their work at the setting of the sun, they took me with them to the seashore, and I accompanied them in their vessel to an island, not far distant, where they brought me to their king. And there, before them and his court, at his command I narrated my adventures since leaving Baghdad, at which his interest was kindled, and he bade me sit with him and eat. And I did so gladly, for my body was thin and meagre, and my vigor was sorely wanting. After that, having shown my gratitude to the king and offered praise to God for his saving grace, I rose, and with the king's permission, went forth into his city. It was a well-conditioned, flourishing place, thronged with buyers and sellers, and there was an abundance of food and rich merchandise. As day followed day, and time drew on, I had cause to rejoice at my arrival in that city, for I found favor with the king, and he magnified me over his people and his great men. Observing the ways of the people, I saw that the horses that they rode were without saddles, whereupon I went into the king and spoke to him on the matter, describing a saddle and the ease and comfort of it. At this, the king desired me to make him one, and placed at my disposal his cleverest carpenter with many tools and instruments. And I sat with the carpenter, and instructed him how to proceed, so that the saddle, covered with polished leather and stuffed with teased wool, was soon complete. I attached stirrup straps and girths, and showed the blacksmith how to fashion the stirrups. Then, with the aid of costly fringes and trappings, the work was complete. Full of satisfaction, I sent for one of the king's finest horses, saddled and bridled him, and led him before his majesty. He was greatly pleased at the sight of what I had done, and when he had mounted the horse and sat in the saddle, he was overjoyed at the ease and pleasure of it, and bestowed upon me a large reward. When the king's chief officials and the grandees of his court saw the saddle which I had made, they each and all desired me to make others like it. Then, with the carpenter and the blacksmith, I employed many days in the construction of numerous saddles, and for these I received much gold, and rose to an assured position in the land. The high rank and honor which the king had bestowed upon me had but half expressed his heart toward me. I was yet to learn that he had a further favor in store. One day, while I was sitting at his right hand discussing affairs of state, he said to me, "O my son, seeing thou hast now become as one of us, and we cannot part with thee, I desire that thou give ear to a matter which I have planned, and which will bind thee more closely to us." And I answered him, "For thy great kindness to me, O king, I am now and henceforth thy faithful servant. What dost thou desire me to do?" And he looked at me intently, and said, "I would marry thee to a woman of high rank among us, one possessed of great beauty and wealth, so that thou mayest continue to dwell with us in pleasure and comfort, and with a good heart. Thus shalt thou advantage greatly, and receive every good thing at my hands. Wherefore, refuse me not, nor oppose my wish." I remained silent, for I was overwhelmed by his proposal, and the stress of bashfulness it brought to my face. Seeing this, he rallied me and said, "Art thou dumb? Is not thy heart with us?" Then of a sudden I replied, "O king, thy words took away my breath. As thou commandest, so I obey." Pleased at my compliance, the king immediately ordered his officials to bring the lady and the witnesses, and forthwith I was married to her, with the king's blessing and the acclamation of all his court. She was of surpassing loveliness, and she brought me a dowry of abundant wealth and possessions. And to this the king added a magnificent house with servants and slaves, and assigned me a handsome salary. And I lived in ease and comfort, our days being full of delights. Gone was all thought of the perils and hardships I had endured, and gone was the fear of adversities in store. But there is no strength nor power but in God, and he orders the fates of men as he will. On an evil day, a great fear suddenly came to me by reason of a thing which I will make known to you. A companion of mine suffered a bereavement in that his wife died, whereupon I went to him and mourned with him, saying, "Take heart, O brother, God will fill her place to thee with one far better." But he continued to weep, saying, "Alas, how can I marry another, when this very day I depart this life?" "Nay," said I, "that is not within reason, for thou art in good health, and not like to die." He then raised his head and dried his tears, and said to me, very slowly, "Hear me, O my brother. Knowest thou not that today they will bury my wife, and that they will bury me also in the same tomb with her? For such is our custom. When husband or wife is buried, the other must be buried also, so that neither may continue to enjoy life alone." "By Allah," said I, smiting palm on palm, "this custom is wholly vile, and it toucheth me closely." Then, as we continued to discuss this matter, there came others who condoled with my companion, grieving not only for the loss of his wife, but also that they should never see him more. And later in the day came yet others bearing a bier, and on this they laid the woman and carried her forth prepared for burial, with all her jewels and raiment and wealth, and the husband went with them. Through sympathy with my companion, and to bid him a last farewell, I followed this funeral procession till it halted in a distant spot on the seashore. There a great stone was lifted, and a vault exposed. Into this they threw the body of the woman, and then by means of a stout cord they lowered the husband gently till he rested by her side. A pitcher of water and 7 cakes were then let down to him, and when he had freed himself from the cord, they drew it up and closed the sepulchre, and went their ways. "By Allah," said I within myself, as I smote myself on my breast, "this manner of death is the worst of all." And on my return, I went into the king with grief and fear gnawing at my heart. "O king," I said, "tell me, why is this, that ye bury the living with the dead?" Said he, "O my son, it is the custom of our country, and has descended to us from our ancestors. Husband and wife are one, in death as in life." And I answered him with a question that concerned me nearly. "O my lord," I said, "and the stranger that sojourneth with thee, if his wife die, do ye treat him in like manner?" "Yea," he replied, "in like manner, even as thou hast seen." Then I departed from him in grief and mourning, lest I should perchance be bereft of my wife. In vain did I say to myself, "Be comforted, maybe thou wilt die before her, none knoweth." In vain did I give myself up to my manifold occupations. The fear was not to be dispelled. And within a short time, what I had feared came to pass. My wife was stricken with a fever, and when I had reason to hope she would recover, she suddenly relapsed and died. My grief at this was overwhelming, but, as if to add to it, there came many to condole with me on her death, and to mingle their tears with mine, for that I should soon be departing this life. The king himself came and commiserated with me on my most unhappy fate, and he said, "There is no strength nor power in any but God. Farewell, O my son." And they prepared my wife for burial, arraying her in her richest garments and her finest jewels. But when they carried her to the burial place and cast her down into the pit, and all my companions pressed upon me to bid me farewell, my gorge rose, and I cried out upon them that their custom was vile. Loudly I spoke my bitter mind on the abominable nature of this thing. They would not listen, but took me by force and lowered me into the pit, together with the 7 cakes and the pitcher of water. And when I had reached the floor of a vast cavern, they called down to me, "Untie the ropes, that we may draw them up." I answered, "Draw me up with them." "Nay, nay," they replied, "we do but follow our custom." "To the ravens with you and your custom," I retorted, for I had no stomach for this proceeding. Then, as I steadily refused to loose the ropes, they at last threw them down upon me, and having closed the mouth of the pit, went their way. Now was I in worse plight than I had ever been. On that cavern floor there were the bodies and bleached bones of those that had died a natural death, cheek by jowl with those who had perished in the fulfillment of this abominable custom. And I said to myself, better to remain single and live than to marry and be buried alive. Nevertheless, knowing not night from day, I kept myself from death by eating sparingly of the cakes and drinking some of the water, for I was in no mood to die in so vile a manner, after having come through great perils by mountain and sea. At length, when I had eaten all the cakes and drunk all the water, and hunger and thirst began to cry out within me, I arose and wandered to and fro in the cavern, stumbling and falling over dead bodies, and biting the dust of bones that had crumbled long since. By dint of much groping in the dark, I at length found the wall of the cavern, and selecting therein a cavity free from bones and corpses, I stretched myself and slept. I was awakened later, as if by hunger and thirst knocking at the door, and while I sat in gloom thinking of the plenty in Baghdad, fool that I was to leave it, I heard a sudden noise. Looking forth from my cavity, I saw that the stone had been removed from the opening of the cavern, and a dead body was being lowered. It was the body of a man, and after him was let down the living body of his wife. She was weeping and wailing for him and for herself. Then the mouth of the cavern was closed again, and all was dark and silent, save for the wailing of the woman echoing through the cavern. "Alas," she cried, "that I should die this lingering death! Had I the means to end my life, then would I do it. Would that there were one here to slay me." When I heard this, I remembered that I had never been able to resist the pleadings of a woman. So I arose, and taking a stout leg bone in my hand, I slew her, according to her desire. And I took her 7 cakes and the pitcher of water, which she would no longer need, and retiring to my cavity, I ate and drank. This thing occurred many times during my sojourn in that cavern, for a number of married men and women chanced to die. And though they did not always cry out for me to slay them, I knew their prayer beforehand, and answered it speedily. Thus the cakes and the water bequeathed to me stayed my spirit, and I continued to live. Time passed slowly, but yet it passed. I had no other means of measuring it except to call an hour a day, and a day a year. And I was weary to death of it all, when an unwonted thing occurred. I was awakened suddenly from sleep by a noise at the far end of the cavern. Then I heard footsteps, as of some beast. I arose, and arming myself with a stout bone, advanced upon the intruder. But it heard me, and fled from me, and I could not come at it. Yet as I followed its footsteps, I saw its form darken a pin spot of daylight at the end of a crevice of the cavern. This gave me a glimmer of hope, for where that beast had passed, I myself might pass, and so gain the outer air. Over jagged points of rock, I clambered towards that opening, now losing sight of it, and now gaining view of it again, until at last I reached it, and found that it was indeed a communication with the outer country. With some difficulty, I forced my way through it, and climbed down by a perilous pathway to the seashore. I had escaped from the sepulchre of the living and the dead, and I praised God for the sight of the sky and the sea. But when I looked into my position, and found behind me an impassable precipice, before me the wide-stretching sea, and above me the dome of heaven, I sat down on the shore with my head on my knees, and said within myself, "There is no way out. I cannot scale the sheer cliff, neither can I tread the fishes' pathways in the sea, nor walk in the tracks made by birds in the air. There is no way out." Day followed day, and I strove to stay my hunger with what shellfish I could find, but the supply was meager, and again I was forced to return to the cavern to receive reward of cakes and water in return for merciful death dealt by my hand. Far be it from me to rob the dead, and none can say I did so. It was in the spirit of a last gift generously bestowed by those about to die that chains of pure gold were hung about my neck, and rich jewels thrust upon me. These keepsakes of many I retained, assured that later I should carry them with me to a nameless grave in a desolate spot. But God, in his infinite mercy, willed it otherwise, for one day, sitting sadly on the shore, as was my wont, I espied a vessel on the sea. Hope surged high within my breast, and I arose and stripped myself of a white garment, and mounted it on a staff, and ran wildly to and fro, waving it above me. And when my signal was observed, the vessel stayed its course, and sent a boat ashore. "Who art thou, and what doest thou here?" cried one from the boat as it ran upon the beach. "Know ye not that this is a desolate coast, and none has ever been seen upon it?" And I greeted them with joy, and answered them, telling my strange experience in a few words. Then, their wonder strong within them, they took me across to the ship, and led me before the master, who marveled greatly at finding a man where none had ever seen a human being before. He asked me many questions, and when I answered him, giving him the whole history of my adventures as heretofore set down, he was a man bewildered. Raising his eyes to heaven, he said, "By Allah, thy case is extraordinary!" And all around wondered that a man could experience such things and live. In return for his kindness in rescuing me from my terrible plight, I tendered him some of the rarest jewels I had brought with me from the cavern. But he refused me courteously, saying, "Nay, O my brother, if we find one in like case with thee, we succor him, and give him to eat and drink, and if he be naked, we clothe him. Then, at the first city we reach, we set him on land with some valuable token of our goodwill. For so it is with us at the sea, that we are not unmindful of the sufferings of others." And when I heard this, I prayed for him and his family, that he and they might live long in health and prosperity. Our journey from that place, where I had suffered so much, took us from island unto island towards the city of El Basra. As we proceeded, the places where we cast anchor grew more and more familiar to me, and, as of old, I bought and sold as merchants do. At length, we arrived at the city of El Basra, whence, having transacted business there for some days, bartering and selling the jewels I had acquired, I journeyed to Baghdad. There, in the bosom of my family, and surrounded by my companions, I returned to my former habit of life. These, then, were the experiences of my fourth voyage, and, O my brother Sindbad the landsman, if thou wilt honor me by thy presence tomorrow, I will relate to thee still stranger things that befell me in my fifth voyage.